What is up, though, Detroit fans? What is up, though, Lions fans? It is your boy, Chef. We're back, and you already know what time it is. It is time for the YAK Pod episode number 88. Man, it seems like just yesterday we are closing in on the 100th episode, and I'm sure that the 100th episode is going to be something special. But we got some things to talk about today. We're just going to continue our conversation about these lists because there have been some developments. There have been some people on podcasts trying to explain themselves. And I don't think that these explanations have really brought too much merit to these lists. You could say that they have, you could say that they have not. And then we even found a worse publication than PFF. PFF has some redeeming qualities. Like, for instance, Aiden Hutchinson is the number one edge rusher under the age of 25. And he's number 6 overall edge rusher in the NFL. He's behind guys like Micah Parsons, Max Crosby, you name it. He's behind those guys and those guys alone. So he's the number 6 edge rusher in the entire NFL. Number 1 under 25, number 6 in the entire NFL. Great. Cool. Other than that, this quarterback list, Trevor Sikkema was on the Woodward Heavyweights this evening, and he was talking about his decisions and how he rated these quarterbacks. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Sorry, there was some commotion in the background there. Spoiler alert. I've lost my train of thought. He let us know that PFF, which is the bee's knees apparently, which is the industry standard apparently, which is the publication that everybody goes to. If you're a football watcher, if you're a stat geek, if you're any of these things, you go to PFF. And you go to PFF because PFF does an absolutely wonderful job, magnificent actually, laying out stats and metrics and all of these things. So if you want to sound like a smart football fan, you're probably going to PFF. If you want to be a lazy analyst who's not really actually watching the games, just like a lot of national media doesn't watch the Detroit Lions, now you're forced to watch the Detroit Lions because I think we only play 5 games at 1 p.m. This upcoming season. So that's that's 12 games, which are prime time or afternoon, America's game of the week type of games. So you're forced now to watch the Detroit Lions. But in the past, there have been certain analysts who are speaking from just maybe a stat sheet. They're not talking about the eye test. And they probably got their stats from PFF. But if you're on TV, you're probably not getting your own stats, especially if you're on TV for like an Undisputed or a Speak. I'm not going to say Colin Cowherd because I think Colin Cowherd does his... actually, probably not. Colin Cowherd, probably more so than any of the other people, probably does his own research. But people like, at Speak, like Emmanuel Acho and Undisputed, they have people that work with them that do the research for them. Now, when they're prepping for the shows, they go over the research that someone else has done for them, but they haven't done the research themselves. So they're basically married to these takes. And a lot of that information comes from publications like PFF. I get it. I understand 100%. But the reason that I have a problem with that is because it allows for narratives. And this guy, Trevor Sikkema, pretty much admitted that they allow for narratives. They have made up a stat called big time throws. This stat is made up and it is subjective. It talks about how a quarterback throws the football down the field and in tight windows. This is a completely made up stat that has never been a metric to talk about how a quarterback performs. And oh, by the way, even by this metric, they are wrong about Jared Goff. Why are they wrong about Jared Goff? Well, here's the thing. Jared Goff, go look it up, 20-yard throws over 20 yards down the field. Oh, he had that in droves. Tight windows, you say? Go back and look at some of those throws that he was fitting into Amon-Ra St. Brown. Some of those throws, you could see them, and you could see how tiny the window was, and you just went when you saw him throw that football. You could see it, and you would clutch your pearls, and you would hold your breath when you saw him throw that football. Because you're like, man, there's no way that that's not getting picked off. That window is super duper tight. And guess what happened? It wasn't picked off, and it went right into, hit Amon-Ra St. Brown countless times right in the numbers. So we have all of this information that is supposed to push guys like Goff down, and it doesn't. And they still go with that. And then they start going, and then Trevor Sikkema said today that Jared Goff just doesn't play as well in pressure situations. Go back and look it up. Jared Goff against the blitz. He was tops in the league against the blitz. So much so that we had people wondering, was it worth blitzing Jared Goff or not? Jared Goff was excellent against the blitz. Isn't that called pressure? That's called pressure, right? Pressure situations. So Jared Goff being excellent against the blitz and Jared Goff being one of the fastest to get the ball out of his hands to one of his open receivers. These were all reasons, again, why Jared Goff should be number 16 on that list. And then the most egregious one, I haven't gotten to that yet, but I'm going to get to it. So when we look at Jared Goff and he has all these numbers and he's disproving these metrics that Trevor Sikkema is trying to use, what was the other thing that he said? He said something along those lines. Oh, okay. Yeah. So off platform with so outside of the framework of the offense, he just doesn't make the plays. All right, so now you're penalizing Goff because generally Goff doesn't have to make plays outside of the framework of the offense because the offensive line protects him very well. So he doesn't really have to. He's not the most mobile quarterback. The greatest quarterback of all time, GOAT. Remember, I made a distinction between GOTE and GOAT. I believe that Patrick Mahomes is the GOTE GOAT, the greatest of this era. Tom Brady is the GOAT GOAT, the greatest of all time. Tom Brady would never be mistaken for being a mobile quarterback. Let me say that again. Tom Brady would never be mistaken for being a mobile quarterback. Now, did Tom Brady have better pocket presence than Jared Goff? Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. But if Tom Brady's play broke down, there was not going to be a scramble drill. The scramble drill was probably the least practiced drill in the Patriots organization. Tom Brady was not scrambling out of the pocket and running the ball 10 to 15 yards down the field. Tom Brady would pick his spots and pick up some yards, but he's not a great running quarterback. That just wasn't his thing. And he's the greatest of all time. So now we are penalizing Jared Goff for not operating outside of the framework like a Dak Prescott or a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen or even a Brock Purdy or a Jordan Love. Okay, that's fine. Whose stats were better? Who got further with their team this season? Who has been improving year over year since he got to Detroit? That would be Jared Goff. Jared Goff has made it with the Detroit Lions. Let that sink in, because this is not like, we always get discredited within the media. Now, again, props to Trevor Sikkema, because Trevor Sikkema did give props to the Detroit Lions. He did say the Super Bowl window is wide open. He spoke highly of Hutch. He spoke highly of the Detroit Lions overall. But this Goff thing just doesn't make any sense, because when we're breaking it down and you're trying to explain to me how you came up with certain metrics and how you came up with these lists, I want to know clearly. Explain yourself. And he did not do so clearly. So when you look at Jared Goff, like I said, in 3 years with the Detroit Lions, because, the Detroit Lions have been the punching bag of the media for quite some time. National media, even local media, has been punching down, apparently, as they say, on the Detroit Lions. And every time a player was on the Detroit Lions, they probably were going to get discredited in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And if you sucked and you were part of the problem, cool, no problem. You had to be a generational talent like Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson in order for you to get the proper respect that you deserve. And obviously you had people that came like Reggie Bush. He was already established, and so on and so forth. We got a few of those guys along the way. When Matthew Stafford was in Detroit, the biggest accomplishment he had was being Clayton Kershaw's best friend. And that's what they would always talk about in the national media. Clayton Kershaw and Matthew Stafford went to the same high school, and they played on the same baseball team. Awesome, outstanding. You had guys like Sue, and he was getting his flowers and his all these things. Again, 2014 was a great year for the Detroit Lions as far as the roster was concerned, but it didn't end in a playoff win, which was concerning. But when we're talking about playoff wins, Dak Prescott has been the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, I believe, for 8 years. He has not made it as far as Jared Goff made it in 3 years with the Detroit Lions. Jared Goff had us one half away from the Super Bowl. Jared Goff was not the reason that we didn't go to the Super Bowl. Dak Prescott was a huge part of the reason why the Dallas Cowboys did not advance past the wild card round. Dak Prescott is generally part of the reason why the Dallas Cowboys in his tenure have not been to the NFC Championship game. This is the Dak Prescott, which this man, Trevor Sikkema, glazed over for about, and I didn't say glossed over, I said glazed over. He glazed over him for about 2 minutes straight. And he talked about how his big time throws, and he had just such a fantastic year, and it's just a QBR. And, okay, listen, big time throws, Dak Prescott, sure. But when you have receivers running wide open down the field like CeeDee Lamb, is that really a big time throw, or are you just making the throw that's there? What are the tight window, like, and then even when he was explaining this big time throw stat, he's just like, well, I don't really want to like define it as such. Then what is it? If you don't want to define it as something, what exactly is it? What does that mean? I don't want to define it as such because I want it to be subjective so that I want to be able to move the goalpost. It's pretty much what he was saying. Because when you have wide open receivers running down the field, because you're playing against bad competition, the tight windows thing doesn't really apply. If you look at the play that was, I talked about it before, when Derek Barnes fell asleep as he was rushing to try to sack Dak Prescott. He fell asleep in the middle of the play. I'm not going to say he whiffed. I'm not going to say anything of that nature. He fell asleep. He was sleeping on the field. He took a nap while rushing the passer. And that's why his eyes were closed and he didn't see what he was doing as he lunged towards Dak Prescott, because he was asleep. He was napping. He was asleep at the wheel. No one was home. So after Derek Barnes fell asleep and missed Dak Prescott, guess what else happened? Kindle Vildor fell down. So we have Derek Barnes falling asleep in the middle of a play. We have Kindle Vildor failing to keep his balance and falling down on the turf. And guess who was the beneficiary of all of that? One Cedarius Lamb. I believe his name is Cedarius. One Cedarius Lamb, or as we call him, CD, was wide the hell open. He was so wide open that he had time to bend down and tie his shoes and make a phone call. And then Dak Prescott throws him the ball, and he runs it down. It's a 90-plus yard touchdown. Does all the credit for that play go to Dak Prescott? It was such an easy throw to make. The guy that was supposed to be in your face ran by you because he fell asleep. Deep sleep. How you miss a man that's right in front of you? There is no other explanation other than being asleep. That's it. He was napping. So that man was the only pressure in your face. And he, like I said, Rip Van Winkle, he fell asleep. They probably should have been checking him for narcolepsy after that play. And then the man that was covering him fell down. I mean, if that's not a practice throw, if that's not an on-air throw. Now, if you played football before, you know that there's a certain section, a certain portion of practice where mostly offense runs on air, right? Because the defense going on air is kind of silly. But we do it when we're installing concepts and things of that nature. We will run it on air. But the offense routinely runs plays on air because, again, you're installing concepts. You have routes that you have to run. You're seeing the routes. The quarterback needs to be able to see the routes that everyone is doing without impediment. No defenders in the way. If this receiver is supposed to run a slant, the quarterback needs to see it cleanly how that slant is supposed to be run. If one receiver is supposed to run a bang 8, if one receiver is supposed to run a 7, one receiver is supposed to run a hitch, a curl, a go, a drag, whatever the case may be, the quarterback needs to see what they are doing and the routes that they're running, how they're supposed to look together, so that the quarterback can understand truly and completely the concept of the play. You don't just put plays in for a quarterback to run and it's always on a live defense. Now, in the game, obviously, he's always going to be running it on a live defense, but he needs to know it's a mental situation how that play is supposed to run. Because you can take all the mental reps that you want to, but it helps to see a receiver running unimpeded down the field. If he's supposed to run a 5-yard hitch, a 5-yard out, a 5-yard curl, it helps you to understand how long it takes him to get that 5 yards, how his breakdown is going to be unimpeded. Because it helps you to make better throws. It helps you to make better decisions. It helps you to be better informed about the offense that you are in command of. That happens in practice. It doesn't happen in games. And it happened in the game against the Detroit Lions because of all of those factors that I just talked about. And for some reason, this man is giving Dak Prescott credit for that. Now, it's not saying that, like, okay, any quarterback could have made that throw or whatever. And I'm not saying that he's a bad quarterback and he shouldn't get any credit for anything. But you don't get credit for gimmies. Right? Yeah, he had to make the throw. He could have overthrown him. He could have underthrown him. But if he overthrows a guy there or underthrows a guy there, you're like, he probably shouldn't be an NFL quarterback. What's going on, Paul Thomas? You have made it an excellent time. You get to hang out with us. But anyway, as I was saying, a quarterback who would miss CeeDee Lamb in a situation where he has no pressure in his face and the DB has fallen down, he probably shouldn't be an NFL quarterback. That's just pitch and catch. Play and catch in the backyard. And if you can't hit the guy that's right in front of you when you're playing catch in the backyard, you're probably not going to get picked, too high, like when people are divvying up the teams. So the guy is giving, he's not saying, well, let's take that away because that doesn't count as far as the quarterback. No. He's keeping that in there. And it was just absolutely ridiculous. So he just glazed this man for like 2 minutes straight. And then talked about how much it sucked that his regular season success, albeit against mostly bad competition and then lost against good competition, right? We're gonna discount that. We're not gonna talk about that. He went on to talk about how it sucked that the season ended the way that it ended and how the Dallas Cowboys, particularly Dak, was awful in that game against the Packers. And he went on to say about it being pretty much normal that Dak has a great regular season, but it just can't translate into postseason success. But you're still keeping him at number 6. So this list by PFF is a list that said, I like this guy, so I'm going to put him here. And I already explained what PFF is. PFF is the premier place where you go to get your stat knowledge, right? You could go to StatMuse. You can go to some other places. And if I'm being honest with you, StatMuse has more pure stats. They don't have any subjective stats. They don't have any conjecture, innuendo. They don't have any of that. All you do is you look for stats on StatMuse and they give you the stats. How many touchdowns did Jared Goff have in 2020? It's going to tell you exactly that. It's not going to talk about big time throws. It's not going to talk about fitting throws into tight windows or throwing the ball down the field. Blah, 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 blah. It's not going to talk about any of those things. It's going to just show you what you asked for. So then here was the most ridiculous part. Are you guys ready for this? Are you guys sitting in chairs? Are you in comfortable positions within your house, your home office, your car, wherever you are watching from? Are you comfortable? I need to know. What is going on? Here's Johnny. I need to know if Here's Johnny is comfortable. Are you comfortable? You're sitting down. Okay. I'm just going to say this the only way that I can say it. And then I'll try to explain it. But it doesn't make any sense. So, but I'll give you a little bit of context before I explain that. He said, basically, he was discrediting Jared Goff for playing in Ben Johnson's offense. That was pretty much kind of the tone of the stuff. He had a great season. I mean, he had his best season, and he did this and that and the third thing. But the framework and the framework of the offense, and when he's within the framework, blah 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 blah, yada yada yada. This man goes on to say that he will have no problem putting Jared Goff in the top 10. Now, okay, listen. He's 16 right now. He'll have no problem putting him in the top 10 if Jameson Williams breaks out this season. Yes, I said that. I said this is what's going on, brother. This is what Trevor Sikkema said on the heavies. He will have no problem putting Jared Goff in the top 10 if Jameson Williams breaks out. And he wasn't saying if Goff is just making spectacular throws to Jameson Williams and it makes Jameson Williams look spectacular. No. He was talking about Jameson Williams taking short throws over the middle and getting lots of YAK, which has nothing to do with the quarterback. YAK is not a quarterback stat. We kill quarterbacks who are Captain Dink and Duck, Captain Checkdown, who will throw a 2-yard pass and the receiver takes it 50, 60 yards. We don't give those quarterbacks any credit. But he's saying that this man will be moved into the top 10 if he can get into a situation where a receiver gets a bunch of YAK. I did not say this. Trevor Sikkema said this. Trevor Sikkema said this. Now, for those of you who watch Woodward Sports and they know about Jesus, shout out to Jesus for letting us know about Caleb Williams, because I didn't watch any Caleb Williams last season. I don't even really get too much into college football. I will admit that I used to be a diehard college football fan because the Lions were so bad. And I just needed something. So those Rich Rod days were very, very painful for me. But now that I've been overseas for a long time, I make time for the NFL. I don't make too much time for college football, but I'm gonna have to obviously doing this podcast and doing. I've never done a mock draft. I'll probably do one next year, but I didn't watch a whole lot of Caleb Williams last year. So Trevor Sikkema being a draft guy, he calls himself. He says, "I'm a draft guy," and he's PFT's like #1 draft analyst. He said it would be disingenuous for him not to put Caleb Williams on this list somewhere because of what he saw last season from Caleb Williams. Now, where Juices comes in is that he let us know that Caleb Williams had 20 turnovers last season in college. He said he has this thing where he just throws interceptions. And when I watch the film on Caleb Williams, I can see why he throws interceptions. Because Caleb Williams does this thing which will get you out of the NFL really, really fast. He locks on to receivers. He stares them down. And then he throws the football to them. In the NFL, that will not work because the DBs are professionals. They drive Mercedes-Benzes too. They drive BMWs. They do all of that. And they get paid to watch film and to understand technique. They get paid. And if you're staring down a wide receiver in the NFL, and then you throw it to him, you are going to get intercepted. You're going to get picked off. So he puts Caleb Williams on this list without Caleb Williams having ever thrown a football in the NFL. Forget throwing a football. He's never handed the ball off in the NFL. Forget handing the ball off. He's never taken a snap in the NFL, but he has a place in the NFL at number 19 on the list because Trevor Sikkema is a draft guy and he did a lot of work on Caleb Williams. But what about the 20 turnovers? What about the throwing the interceptions and the running around and fumbling the football? I think he had like 5 fumbles last season. What about that? I don't know. I don't understand. Especially when you are brought on to a show and you're asked to explain yourself, when you have some asinine takes, and then someone gives you an opportunity to explain yourself, and you just keep digging in, and you're making up stats like big time throws. You are just the biggest Dak fan, and it shows that you're a huge Dak fan. And you're not looking objectively, you're looking subjectively. I don't get it. I don't know. I don't know. I don't work for PFF. But if this is the kind of thing that they do, I probably could work for PFF. Right? Paul Thomas says that's good analysis. You mean mine or his? But one publication that I could work for is CBS. CBS, thank you, Paul Thomas, is even worse than PFF. CBS has no reason why they do the things that they do. They just hate the Lions. Does anybody remember Pete Prisco? Do you guys remember? I know Broder remembers Pete Prisco because Pete Prisco, no matter what the Lions did, Pete Prisco being a Packers fan and not hiding it. Like if you work for CBS, it's a major corporation. Just like Mike Florio. I remember Mike Florio back in the PFT days when it was just PFT. He didn't have the NBC partnership. He didn't have any of that. He was just a Vikings fan and a lawyer who started a blog, and people would come and comment on it. That was it. That was what PFT was. Once PFT gets the NBC partnership, and he's on Peacock, and he's speaking in front of cameras, sponsored by not NFC, NBC, and he's at studios paid for by NBC, owned by NBC, run by NBC. You have to let the Vikings bias go. Unless NBC is shooting a program called the Vikings podcast, or the Vikings something to do with Vikings. No, it's called Pro Football Talk. Pro Football Talk. So that means that you have to talk about all of professional football, even the CFL, right? Because that is technically pro football, right? So you need to take away your biases, and you need to just report on the information as it comes. I have a Lions podcast. Therefore, I can be biased if I want to be biased, because I don't owe you anything. If you're a Vikings fan and you're watching the show, I'm not going to say too many good things about the Vikings. If you're a Packers fan and you're watching the show, you'll be disappointed if you came here trying to find some good things being said about the Packers. If you're trying to find good things being said about Jordan Love, I'm probably not going to say them. The only thing that I can say is that his second half of the season was so much better than his first half of the season. But we don't know what he is yet, because it was a tale of two halves. Is his first half what he really is, or is his second half what he really is? We won't know until we see another full season. Is he the guy that was accurate and hitting all of his receivers and doing all this now? Oh, here's the question. Here's another question. If you are taking away credit from Jared Goff because he plays in Ben Johnson's system, look at the two games that we played against the Packers. The first game, when we went into Lambeau Field and beat that ass, Jordan Love wasn't getting the ball out in 1.5 seconds. You fast forward to Thanksgiving, when they came into Detroit, and had it not been for the bad game played by Jared Goff with all those turnovers, we probably would have won, because they only beat us by 7. But he was getting the ball out in like 1.5 seconds. Isn't that like a coaching adjustment? Is it adjustment of the scheme? Is that quarterback talent? Or I must be crazy. That sounds like Matt LaFleur made adjustments to help his quarterback, to put his quarterback in good situations and better situations, so that he would be able to be successful. But no one talks about Matt LaFleur when it comes to Jordan Love. We just talk about Ben Johnson when it comes to Jared Goff. Okay, no problem. If that's the way that we're going to do things, that's the way we're going to do things. All right. Right. He's looked special and he's looked booty at the same time in the same season. All right. So, again, like I said, if we're talking about Jordan Love, why aren't we mentioning Matt LaFleur when we're talking about his turnaround? I mean, he had a terrible first 9 games of the season. But then guess what? When it came to the divisional round of the playoffs, when he was playing against the San Francisco 49ers, he didn't take what was given to him in that last drive, and he threw that interception, which he didn't have to throw because he was trying to press the ball down the field, but they had time. And he just, as an immature quarterback, made the very wrong decision instead of taking what the 49ers were giving them. Because the 49ers were playing prevent defense. They're giving you what's underneath. This is what teams do. In late game situations, they will give you the underneath stuff and they'll tell you to take it. And then as you get further down the field, then they will start to compress. This is what defenses do. This is what defenses have done for a very, very long time. It's very rare to see in a situation like that where defense is just going to go all pressure, zero blitz, all these things. It's not going to happen. So instead of taking what the defense was giving him, Jordan Love was trying to win the game and play hero ball, and he threw the interception that sent them packing, pun intended. So why do we take away the first 9 games of the season from Jordan Love, and then we take away the horrible decision that he made to end the Packers season? And we go, ooh, those 8 games were special. Oh, those 8 games. Okay, let's see what happens. All right, if those 8 games are what he is, I give him his flowers. Great quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, great quarterback. Horrible human being. Hated his guts. Very smug. Very arrogant. Hated him. Loved the fact that when he was talking crap about the city of Detroit, Ndamukong Suh knocked his ass out. Concussed. Out of here. I love that. But hated Aaron Rodgers mostly for the fact that we couldn't beat him because he was good. He's a very good quarterback. Right? Hate to say that he's a great quarterback, but he's one of the greats. Can't get it done in the playoffs. You know, when it comes to the NFC Championship game, can't really advance to the Super Bowl. Only been there one time, but that's more times than we've been there. However, I'm going to tell you he's a great quarterback. I'm going to rejoice in all of his failures because that's what you do when you have a great player. You rejoice in their failures, especially when that player is not someone you're a fan of. So I'm rejoicing in the failures of Aaron Rodgers. I'm rejoicing in the fact that Kirby Joseph made him his son and sent him out of the NFC East all the way over to the, not NFC East, the NFC North, all the way over to the AFC East. Goodbye. Right? But that's what happens when we talk about Jared Goff. We don't give him the credit. Now, before I went on that rant, I was talking about CBS. This is another sit-down type of moment. Right? Another sit-down type of moment. CBS put out their rankings for, and I remember how I got on that rant because I was talking about Pete Prisco, right? So Pete Prisco, CBS guy, Packers fan, hates the Lions, was always, he tried his best to rank the Packers ahead of the Lions as much as he could throughout the season until he just couldn't do it anymore. And then once we lost to the Packers, I thought he was just going to drop the Lions down in number 32 and put the Packers up to number 31. I mean, up to number 1, but he didn't do that specifically. Now, back to CBS and what they do. CBS has released their ranking of every RB room in the NFL by tiers. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers headline the top backfield group. Now, I say obviously because of the national perception. So that's why I say obviously. Obviously, it should be the Detroit Lions. Christian McCaffrey is who they have. Is Jeff Wilson still in the backfield? I don't know. I don't really know who the other running backs are off by hand or off by heart. I could Google it. But the Detroit Lions had historically the best backfield combo in the history of the NFL. This is the first and only ever backfield combo, 2 running backs splitting carries, who eclipsed 1,000 scrimmage yards and had 10 plus rushing touchdowns each. I think there was like 24 between them. Each. Jahmyr Gibbs was 55 yards away from 1,000. rushing yards. 55 yards away. You don't think that using him a little bit differently, giving him a little bit more of a workload in the first 7 games would have pushed that 55 up? I think it probably would have. So you're talking about a backfield that has essentially 2,000-yard rushers. 2,000-yard rushers, by any metric, has to be the best running back room in the NFL. By any metric. 2,000-yard rushers? But CBS didn't think so. And that's not even the worst part. The worst part is not that they didn't put them number 1. The worst part is that they are not in the first tier. They're not even in the first tier of running back rooms. San Francisco 49ers, the Baltimore Ravens, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers. Now, this is talking about this year, right? Going into this year. And obviously, the Baltimore Ravens have Derrick Henry. But you can't count Lamar Jackson, even though a lot of people like to call him a running back for whatever reason. I don't know why. All right. You can't count Lamar Jackson. So you have Derrick Henry and you have Keaton Mitchell whenever he comes back from his injury. San Francisco, you have Christian McCaffrey and who? I don't know. Philadelphia Eagles, you have Saquon Barkley and Kenneth Gainwell, maybe? Okay. Green Bay Packers. Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs and who? Who else? Josh Jacobs and a rookie with no interior offensive line. This is what Broder says. I don't even know who the rookie is. I think, was it the rookie that was out of USC? I think that's who that was. The rookie out of USC. So Josh Jacobs and this rookie out of USC. Marshawn something? Marshawn Lloyd. There you go. All right. Marshawn Lloyd's a rookie. Again, hasn't taken a snap in the NFL. Don't know what kind of boxes he's going to be dealing with. And if we're talking about USC, Marshawn Lloyd was in a spread offense where he was running around in those wide open college fields. We don't know what he's going to be in the NFL. We don't know what he's going to be when it's cold and snowing in Lambeau Field. We don't know what he's going to be. So you put all these people over the Detroit Lions. I respect Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell. I respect Christian McCaffrey. Don't know who else is in this backfield. I don't see, like, okay, so with Saquon Barkley, I'm going to say that Saquon Barkley is probably, if he can stay healthy, Saquon Barkley is going to have most likely a bounce back year because of the offensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles. But wait. Didn't they have a captain, like a quarterback, of the offensive line? I think his name was something like, was it Jason Kelsey? I think the center, help me if I'm wrong, the center is a very important piece of the offensive line, correct? Doesn't he, like, make calls and change protections, and doesn't he? Isn't he like the quarterback off the offensive line? So you lost your quarterback of the offensive line. Lane Johnson is just getting older and more injured. You've got Jordan, is it Momoa? Not, it's not Momoa. I'm thinking of Jason Momoa. Jordan Mailata. Okay. I mean, you got some pieces, but we really don't know what that offensive line is going to look like. Thank you, Bruder. We don't know what that offensive line is going to look like without one Jason Kelsey. We just don't know yet because they haven't taken any snaps together. I don't think they're going to be as bad as the New York Giants line. And then also, other than the line, Saquon Barkley now has weapons on the outside. He has Devontae Smith. He has A.J. Brown. He has people who can take box hardness away from him, right? Saquon Barkley, when he was in New York, he was dealing with a lot of 8-man boxes because who were they throwing to? Darius Slayton, Kenny Galladay, like it just, there wasn't that guy or those guys on the outside that were going to stretch the field and make them afraid of going, hey, we know Danny Dimes can run. He's like Vanilla Vic, as they call him. We know he can do that. We'll let him get out of the pocket. But really what's going to happen is you guys are going to be like a 5-6 win team. We'll just shut down Saquon Barkley. And when Saquon Barkley is not busy being injured, he's averaging 2 yards a carry because he's got no space to run behind that offensive line. So he will probably do better, right? He'll probably do better with the Philadelphia Eagles. How much better is it remains to be seen. If he stays healthy, he'll probably have 1,000-yard season in Philadelphia. That's not beyond the realm of possibility. I think that should probably be an expectation for someone like Saquon Barkley, who hasn't really lived up to, like Trevor Lawrence, hasn't really lived up to his draft stock. That's fine. Those people are all fine. But Josh Jacobs and a rookie, let me talk to you about Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs had that one season where he had 340 carries and 1,600 yards. Fantastic, awesome, never been replicated. Never been replicated. Last year, shout out to the heavies because they said this yesterday. I think Josh Jacobs had 50 more carries than Jahmyr Gibbs, and he had less yards. But just forget about the stats. When we played Josh Jacobs, he went for like 40 yards. We played him, and he went for 40 yards. That's not scary. I'm not scared of a running back that's going to pick up 4 first downs in the entire game. 40 yards is 4 first downs. 1 every quarter. Now I know, obviously he had other carries. He had more than 4 carries. And that makes it even worse. Because if a guy has 4 carries for 40 yards, that's a lot better than 10 carries for 40 yards or 15 carries for 40 yards or even 20 carries for 40 yards, because that's only 2 yards per carry. Josh Jacobs is not scaring me. Now, where are the Detroit Lions on this list? Are you ready for this? Tier 2 quality depth. The Detroit Lions are number 1 in Tier 2, and Tier 2 is called quality depth. I didn't tell you what Tier 1 was called. Tier 1 was called thoroughbreds. Tier 2 is called quality depth. Jahmyr Gibbs, who averaged 5.2 yards a carry, The electrician, Jahmyr Gibbs. David Montgomery, who averaged, I think, damn near 5 yards a carry. It's not quality depth. These two together in a backfield that produced pretty much 2,000 rushing yards. This is not quality depth. This is historical. This has never happened in the NFL. It's historical. Both running backs went for 1,000 plus scrimmage yards. Both running backs had 10 plus rushing touchdowns. We're not talking about receiving touchdowns. We're talking about rushing touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs is an absolute threat. Do you guys remember the play when Javid Best took a handoff up the middle and went 80 yards on Monday Night Football at Ford Field against the Chicago Bears? Do you remember that? Because Jahmyr Gibbs is that type of threat every time he touches the football. Now, I don't submit that the national media has to watch all of the NFL, but shouldn't you? If you're making these lists, which are just completely asinine lists, and this isn't the first sin of CBS. No. CBS has been sinning for quite some time. Like I said, Pete Prisco is employed by CBS. Shouldn't you just know what you're talking about? At least, like, if I'm going to make a list, just take your time, do the stats, do the work, and then make your list. Because what do you want? You want yards after contact? Jahmyr Gibbs has that. Oh, Monty definitely has that. You want broken tackles? Doesn't Monty have like the most broken tackles since he's come into the league of any running back? Something like that. His broken tackle percentage is like tops in the NFL. But these are the guys that you're telling me are quality depth. Now, Paul Thomas, I love Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm the one to start calling him the electrician. Nobody jukes like Barry. Nobody. Just nobody jukes like Barry. Remember, Paul Thomas, I don't know if you know this. The Minnesota Vikings let loose a chicken in practice to simulate the movements of Barry Sanders. Nobody else. That's not happening for anybody else. There are no other chickens being released in practices to simulate the movements of anyone else. I love Jahmyr Gibbs. But Barry Sanders is my football father. And if you're going to be compared to my football daddy, you got to be like him. So I understand that Jahmyr Gibbs has some Barry-esque qualities. Also, shout out to Bijan, because the first time I saw Bijan, I thought he had some of the qualities of Barry Sanders. His start-stop ability, cutting on a dime, all of these things. Just the body, the way the body moves. Now, Barry Sanders, if we remember, and this is when you know that Barry Sanders is an alien. Remember the play against John Lynch, the famous poster when his upper body went left and his lower body went right? That's how you knew that Barry Sanders was just from another planet. You just knew that at that point. Okay, but I just don't understand. I can't fathom. I don't understand why CBS puts out these lists. They're just utter garbage. They're garbage. They're not even like they're irredeemable. They're irredeemable. But I don't know, man. Does anybody have anything to say? Uh, if I had a chance to cook one meal for Barry Sanders, what are you making? Camel's tongue. I think everyone should try a camel's tongue once in their life. It's delicious. It's got to be my favorite meat. Um, Casuals buy into it. I guess yes, and it seems like these lists are made by casuals. You know what I mean? Camel's tongue, Paul Thomas. If you haven't had it, you have to have it. That is just camel's tongue. Broken taco. Why would I make broken tacos? All right. Would I make broken tacos as an homage to the broken tackles? Is that why I'd be making broken tacos? That's one way that we could spin it. Right? That is one way that we could spin it. In Middle Eastern, you are eating my tongue? No, are you a camel, Paul Thomas? uh Broken tacos can be the nickname for the Packers backfield. Now, see, if we're saying because of the departure of Aaron Jones, who used to wear the sombrero, that would make sense. You're a camel because you're from Lebanon. No, you're not a camel, Paul Thomas. I used to live in Qatar, so those are where the camels are. The Gulf, the Arabian Gulf, Sharq al Awsat. That is where the camels are, Paul Thomas. Yeah, so I would go with that. Broken tacos because of the departure of Aaron Jones. So guys, there will be some big news coming up. I can't make the announcement just yet. But we will be moving to a new location. And I'm not going to say too much. Like I said, I have to get the paperwork signed, all that stuff. But there will be some exciting things coming along and coming down the pike. It will be all grit all the time. And that's what we're running with as we kind of tease this announcement. But it's probably going to get me in front of more people. There will be an opportunity for people to become members of the channel. I know someone was talking about super chats before, so there will be opportunities to do all of that. And just basically, as quickly as we can get it done, we will get started with this new situation. And that's all I can say for now. That is all I can say for now. But once it happens, I will be asking you to subscribe to something new. I'm not sure what's going to happen too much with this channel, but it will be just, like I said, a new location where I will be streaming from in partnership. It'll be mostly me, but yeah, so, we'll have guests, we'll have some different things. We're taking the kitchen to newer heights. I definitely will let you guys know. Boys Weekend in Australia coming. Come through, brother. Come through. But like I said, I will keep you guys posted. When it goes down, I will definitely let you guys know and tell you to come and check us out in the new location. And I appreciate everyone for coming through. Smash that like button as always. Share as always. Let the people know. And we're going to be we're just going up, man. We're just going up. That is what the plan is. But I have got to go, guys. Again, appreciate you coming out. Love you guys in the chat. Appreciate hanging out with me. Appreciate. I want to give a big shout out to Mile Marker, because Mile Marker, and not saying anything about anyone else, but Mile Marker has been through the technical difficulties that I was having for like 2 weeks. Been stuck with me. I mean, there would be times where I would have to restart my computer in the middle of the stream because I was using, brother, cover your ears, I was using trash ass vmix. Okay, vmix is it just if your internet is not 8,000 gigabits per second, you're not really going to be able to do too much with that. But yes, big shout out to Mile Marker. As always, guys, that's it. That's all the time I have for today, and I will see you next time. Peace.